There are 3 singers left in Group C, and by the end of this episode, we will know who is moving on to the Lucky Six. We've got 2 already from Group A, 2 from Group B, and the 2 remaining members of Group C will join them. Let's talk the Masked Singer. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It. Welcome to my recap and reaction video for The Masked Singer Season 13. This is the Group C finals. So this will determine who goes head-to-head against the remaining members of Group A and Group B. And I think this one is a pretty obvious one because there's one person in Group C that I have been saying should have been gone from the first week of Group C, and yet they continue on and on. So we will find out what is going on with that. But it is Decades Night, another sort of meaningless theme night. All it means is each artist sings a song from a different decade and talks about how they relate to that decade. And then it's another reason for the panel to, kind of dress up and whatever. So another sort of useless theme here on the show. But before we get into the specifics of this episode, let me welcome you back to the channel. If you are a subscriber already to Dan Reviews It, thank you so much for that. Love it when you guys return and check out my videos. And not just Masked Singer stuff, but I do movie and TV reviews just about every day on the channel. So there's a lot going on, not just with The Masked Singer. Because, of course, this will be wrapping up in a few weeks. And I would love if you, kept checking out my movie and TV stuff even after the season wraps for The Masked Singer. All right, and of course comment too, because that helps determine what my thoughts are on these singers. There is still one in Group C, by the way, that I really am not sure about at all. I think there are some solid guesses in the comments other than what I have said, but I don't know. Could be very interesting. All right, so Decades Night starts off with a tune from the late 70s, My Sharona, sang by all of the remaining members of Group C, the Yorkie, the Mad Scientist Monster, and Nessie. So after that, we go into the individual singers, and we start with the Yorkie. Now, Yorkie is the one actually going home, so we will talk first about her clue package, and then go to the Take It Off, and then we will talk about the other 2 members. And I think that makes sense. Yorkie, I've been saying it since week 1 of Group C. Why is Yorkie still here? She's not a very talented singer. All right, so she says she's going to do the 60s. She says, the 60s remind me of my mom. As a young woman, she fell in love and got married, and that white picket fence dream of the decade she had. But a few years later, when I was born, my dad walked out, and we see a skeleton with like a hat on it, like a top hat on the mailbox. And she said she used her pain as a cautionary tale to be guarded with my heart. And we see keys on a leash. And she says, keep love on a short leash. And every chance at love was a bigger chance at heartbreak. We see a sequined gavel at that point. She says, after my own mess with love, I can appreciate where my mom was coming from. And she sang Stop in the Name of Love by the Supremes. Her post-song clue was a vinyl record that said Show Dog on it. And she said, I'm part of one of the biggest TV shows out there. And to me, the clue was more talking about the vinyl, but I guess 60s vinyl records. But if it's who I think it is, the Yorkie has had a bunch of hit club singles, which are usually played on vinyl records still. So, all right, the people made their guesses, but they remain the same for the final guesses at the end of the show. So we'll go right there. But of course, we have to have the extra clue, I forget what they call it, but the final clue before the panel makes their final guesses, and it was Lucky Boots. She said, these are my show boots made for walking, and they even go on the Vegas Strip with me. And so the guesses from the panel, Robin, because of the keys earlier in the clue package, was thinking maybe somebody from Full House. Now, it's interesting because we already had Candace Cameron Bure earlier this season, which nobody mentioned. So I don't know if they're filming these maybe out of order, but we already had Candace Cameron. So we already had one Full House person, but he thought maybe between that, the keys to the house, and then the judge's gavel, maybe somebody who had legal trouble. So he guessed Lori Loughlin, which is not really a terrible guess. I just don't think they would have 2 Full House people on the same season. Rita went with someone she's been saying really since the beginning of Group C, Paris Hilton. Ken thinking maybe Kyle Richards or somebody from the Real Housewives, but that's who he sort of landed on. And then Jenny was thinking Erika Jayne. And that's who I'm going with. The first week of Group C, I had no idea. I thought it was maybe somebody from the Housewives, but I didn't really know enough about them. So I forget who I even guessed. But I after talking to you guys in the comments and looking up a little bit about who Erika Jayne is, and knowing that she's had a bunch of #1 club hits, which is wild because she can't sing. I mean, she's like a karaoke singer to me. She's somebody who can certainly carry a tune, but is not what I would consider a professional singer. But Jenny knows her Real Housewives very well. She put together some of these clues. There was a big diamond in the 1 clue package. She said that was sort of the calling card for the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. So I'm going with it. I don't know what Erika Jayne looks like. So if this is her on the Take It Off, I won't know. But I agree with what you guys had said in the comments. I do think this is Erika Jayne. Now, why she wasn't voted off earlier than now, I don't know. But let's see. Yes, it's Erika Jayne. It says pop performer and personality. Oh, she looks young. Okay, so for a Real Housewife, she actually looks young. Jenny's so excited that she got it. Yeah, boy, she can't sing that well. But good for her for, doing the show. I mean, I guess when you have a bunch of club hits, the beat matters more than the vocals. I said that last week, but I have heard of Erika Jayne. I just don't know that I knew maybe she was a Real Housewife. Yeah, she was funny, I guess. Okay, so maybe she's like a villain on The Housewives. All right, well, we don't need to spend any more time with her. All right, well, whenever it's a Real Housewife, I usually don't know it. But thanks to you guys in the comments, thanks to Jenny's help, I was able to figure this one out. Certainly not a first impression guess on this singer, but we got there. All right, so next up was the mad scientist Monster, and he's doing the 2010s. He said the 2010s were lit, electric cars and smartphones, and one of the best decades of my career. I won every award possible except perhaps the Nobel Prize. I think he's just saying that because he's a scientist in the bit. And then we see the Sun, specifically the Sun mask from season 4, which was LeAnn Rimes. We also see a cowboy hat there. He said, I had a good run, but even though I didn't do it alone, it still didn't last forever. We had different theories on life. I wanted to explore new avenues and keep things going, so I ventured out on my own. We see a pickup truck at that point. A lot of clearly like country music symbols, the cowboy hat, the pickup truck. He said, I found that I liked that I was in control of my results. Sometimes chemistry changes and not everybody's going to love you, and that's okay. And then he sang Love Yourself by Justin Bieber. And the post-on clue for him it just said season 4 on it. And he says, I've performed with someone from season 4. Now, is that LeAnn Rimes or not? There's obviously many, many people from season 4. Robin joked that, they can't remember everybody. But Ken thought it might be Brad Paisley. They're still going hard on this country music thought. So Ken said Brad Paisley. Jenny said, well, Brad Paisley's not super tall, but Blake Shelton certainly is. And the 2010s was a huge moment for his career with The Voice and everything. So that was Jenny's guess. And then Rita thought it could be Billy Ray Cyrus, and because of the pickup truck Old Town Road. And Nick said, well, was the 2010s really his peak of the career? And Rita said, he's Billy Ray. He's, every decade is his decade. Look, if I were Billy Ray Cyrus, I would say my peak was the 90s, because that was, of course, Achy Breaky Heart. I mean, that was even bigger at the time than later on Hannah Montana, because that was more his daughter's show, Miley, than it was his. But, I mean, Hannah Montana certainly was on, I guess, in the 2010s. I think it was on more in the 2000s, though. By 2010, she was doing, like, Wrecking Ball and stuff. So, I think even that is not right. All right, so last week I had said this baseball player, Brett Young, that I don't really know much about, to be honest. But one of you guys in the comments, Brianna, had mentioned Brett Young as a possibility, lined up some of the clues. But last week, from the comments, you guys, a couple of you, were on the Brian Kelly thought, which is somebody from Florida Georgia Line. I didn't know the name at first. Brian Kelly, I didn't know, but I certainly know Florida Georgia Line. I know a lot of their hits, and that would make sense with a bunch of these clues. The 2010s, the I was doing it, not doing it alone, but I wanted to venture out on my own. We had different theories. I'm not familiar enough with country music and up to date with it to know. Have Florida Georgia Line split up? Is Brian Kelly now a solo country artist? I don't know. But look, I think from all those first week clues, it really is an athlete that can maybe sing. So I'm going to actually stick with this Brett Young. This is the one this far in the competition. Usually I'm pretty confident on who is under the mask. I really don't know with this. But I'm going to stick with Brett Young. I think people might be surprised that this is an athlete and not a country singer. Maybe I'm wrong, and it is a country singer. Brian Kelly is not a bad guess. Nobody on the panel, I think, has said it, but you guys in the comments, a couple of you were saying Brian Kelly. So I don't know. That's not bad. But I'm going to stick with my gut that this is a ball player, and I'm going to say Brett Young. All right, and then Mad Scientist Monster actually is the one of the three that moved forward immediately to the Lucky Six. So he did not have to do the what do you call it? The Battle Royale. That was between the Yorkie and Nessie, which I'm a little surprised by. I thought Nessie was a shoo-in for the Lucky Six, but at least he made it. And I don't know. I mean, I think he's got a great voice and could be a contender for the top 2 or 3 of the season. But they said, Mad Scientist Monster, you are through immediately. So then Nessie sang, then afterwards did the Battle Royale with Yorkie, and they sang Hard to Handle, which is interesting because that obviously covers a couple of decades. It was first a hit in the, I think, 60s. And then later on in the early 90s with the Black Crowes. All right, so we've got Nessie did the 80s, and he said the 80s was all about mullets, MTV, camcorders. You'd blast a love song from a boombox just to let your girl know how you feel. And at that point, we see a cassette tape in there saying Nessie's Monster Hits. He said, but growing up, there was one band blasting from my boombox, REO Speedwagon. And we see a B at that point, Bumblebee. He said, I even opened for them. They taught me how to put lyrics to the feelings of love. Valentine's Day is basically my Super Bowl. God only knows how many couples have walked down the aisle to my song. For my own I Do, it was REO Speedwagon that was playing, and we see a snowman at that point, and he says, or he sang, I Can't Fight This Feeling from REO. The post-song clue was Bieber and Puth, and he said, a couple of crazy kids who have covered my music, or Justin Bieber and Charlie Puth. All right, so the clues from, or the guesses from the panel, Rita ended up sticking with her guest from last week, Dave Matthews, but she thought it might be Justin Hawkins from The Darkness. They have a famous Christmas song, Don't Let the Bells End. Not really famous enough in America, I think, for him to be on this show. But that was not a bad guess. She didn't even know his name. I think, who had to, Robin or Jenny? Somebody had to tell her. Robin sticking with Daryl Hall. He's been saying that since the beginning. And then Ken said who he thought it was last week, Pat Monahan, which time-wise makes a lot of sense. Daryl Hall doesn't make any more sense because we learned last week that this person was battling for TRL spots in the late 90s with NSYNC. So Daryl Hall is out. But Pat Monahan from Train, I still think is a good guess, but it's not who I think it is. You guys put me on this path. I thought Rick Springfield the first week, but ever since then, no, I believe it is Edwin McCain. You guys have really honed in on those clues. And this week we got even more of them because with the B clue, his biggest hit is I'll Be. So we saw Bumblebee there. REO Speedwagon makes sense because he is from the Midwest. And look, REO is big, all over the country. And certainly they had a string of hits in the late 70s and the 80s with their ballads and stuff. But in terms of like their rockin' numbers, like Roll with the Changes and stuff like that, the Midwest, they were huge. So I think that makes sense. And then going into commercial, we had the duck clue, the clue duck or whatever. I forget what he's called. But it was Bret Michaels talking about things from the season 3. He was the banana, and he said, I have rocked with Nessie, and if you don't get this one, I'll be shocked. He said, I'll be shocked. It's right there in what he said. So this is, to me, clearly Edwin McCain. And vocally, I really heard it in Hard to Handle. He does not match Pat Monahan from Train. There's a lower register that Nessie has that I don't think. I mean, Pat Monahan has some range, but I think his natural voice is a bit higher than Nessie's is and Edwin McCain's is. Another interesting note with the Mad Scientist Monster that I sort of glossed over, he does this great falsetto that we have not heard until tonight with Love Yourself. Love Yourself by Bieber. And I didn't mention that, but I think that's why he probably advanced, because that falsetto was unexpected. It was great. So if this really is, any kind of ball player, Brett Young specifically, but anybody that's not a professional singer, that is impressive, I will say. But I do still think Nessie has the better vocals, better shot at the top 2 or 3. But all right, so quick one. Only 3 performers this week. Next week, I guess we will have 6 performers, but they're all people that we've seen before, so they probably won't give us a ton of clues. So I think we'll just sort of unpack what we already learned and talk about what songs they sang. But next week, I think we'll have 6 people. So for me, I don't know. I think Boogie Woogie is still my favorite of the season, and I hope he can take it all, or at least end up in the top 2. So we'll see about that. But all right, we will find out more next week. Thank you so much for watching Dan Reviews It, and I'll see you then.